A is for Alcoholic is a program about recovery. My name is John and I'm an alcoholic.
And my name is Jerry and I'm an alcoholic.
Join us as we go through the alphabet of alcoholism one letter at a time.
So, once again, back in the house with Jerry Wagner, this is John Staley talking alcoholism, recovery, and sobriety in the best way we know how, which is not always perfect, it's not always kind, it's not always fun or entertaining, but, you know, we try to sort the shit out as best we can and make some sense of today. And I think that that's really something important to remember, is that, you know, we're just trying to make sense of today, because I can't make sense of the whole world, and I can't make sense of this whole last 6 months, and I certainly can't make sense of the next 6 months that I don't know what exists. And so it's like, okay, what's in my little world? Like, what if Jerry, what if you didn't live with the internet? Do you remember when we didn't live with the internet? Do you have like when we lived up on 3060?
Yeah.
And I mean, I know we were drunk and it was like a constant, like, chaotic struggle of pain and, you know, suffering and fucking recycling bins being overflowed, but you know, like, there was a time where it was like, this was just, our life was just here, and sure, you got some news here and there, but it didn't have to inundate you constantly.
Right. Yeah. We filled that time, though. We filled that time with drinking and partying.
It's true.
There was a lot of time to fill.
Yeah.
There was a lot of time you had to fill up. And remember we had that poker night in the garage? It lasted a few months. We'd do like a poker night every Wednesday night, and then we'd be like, we were such idiots. Like, we were such 90s idiots where we're like, there's the girls' table over there. Because, like, women would show up, and then we'd be like, no, girls sit over there.
I remember saying, like, no girl. First, we didn't want girls, because what would happen is, and this is totally ridiculous, but let's just put it out there. This was 1999. The women would show up, and then the men would not care about poker, and they'd be more interested by the women. This was our thinking. And I don't know, when we wanted to be serious about poker. That's like, come on, man.
Our quarter ante. I'm like over here like, yo, can I win like $4 off my fucking Grateful Dead roommate who dresses up like Pan every Halloween? Or can I try to have sex with one of these girls who might let me do that? Which, now that I look back and think on it, I was like, man, but that's so, I mean, it's gross, like the way we acted.
Yeah.
I mean, poker was kind of fun, but that whole misogynist, chauvinist way of thinking, it was so normal for our time period, though, like the way we were raised, you know?
Sure.
Like, I don't know if I'm necessarily more woke now or more aware now. I guess, yeah, I would like to say I'm more aware of things now, but yeah, so without the internet, though, I mean, I'm gonna pivot off that, but
sure.
Well, we had a lot of time to fill, but we did fill our time, and we were creative people. It wasn't necessarily positive creative, but we were trying to make things. You know, we liked to make things together and do things, and this is a better example of that. You know, here.
This is a far better example than the. Yeah. I wish I knew where that movie was that we made. This was early on. This is before like the 03 cassette video cassettes, but like this was 99. It was like a drug deal gone bad. Do you remember that one?
Yes, dude. We used ketchup, fake blood, and then we had a briefcase that had goddamn like 5 giant Ziploc bags full of flour, and it was like $5,000 for like fucking 40 grand worth of fake cocaine or whatever. Yeah,
we did not do our research on that, but yeah, man, it's funny to think about like those ideas. And so when you think about those old ideas about how we needed to organize our lives and how we needed to spend our time, and certainly about how we thought about women, and I think this also connects to the idea of recovery and old ways of thinking. We read it in the big book. We read it in, you know, lots of I would posit to say that any literature about recovery from drugs and alcohol has something about old ways of thinking and changing your mindset.
I would hope so, right? Because I think that's tantamount to like making such a monumental change in your life. It's changing the way you think, you know? Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm thankful that I don't have cigarette filled, you know, drunken poker nights of bullshit and misogyny in the garage now.
Mhm.
I couldn't cope with that. I couldn't deal with that. We were a nightmare.
Well,
for
dude, we're both like almost 50. We're not almost 50, but we're closer to 50 than
45.
30. Yeah, I'll
Mhm.
be 45 in a week. But
Mhm.
yeah, dude, I just couldn't imagine a bunch of 45-year-old dudes in the garage listening to Ween and Beck and being like, no girls allowed. We're gonna sit in
Right?
our
Like,
garage and smoke cigarettes and listen to Ween and Beck and play poker for quarters with the crew. You know?
mhm.
Yeah.
Saving up my change from the week.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Friday
Can't
night
wait.
poker night.
Friday night poker night with the boys, dude. With all the
Yeah, right.
boys, dude. Yeah.
So this, I think, is good for, this is our topic today, is going to be enabling behaviors. It's
Cool.
it's the letter E, enabling behaviors. And it's not just being an alcoholic and having a sober spouse, or being the sober spouse and dealing with the alcoholic. Although, I mean, I
Right.
want to talk to you about that a little bit too. Because I think that you and I have both been in relationships that on some level the person who was not the alcoholic was enabling, whether they knew it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even
Yeah.
with, let's take our relationship in 1999 in the house, in the garage. We enabled each other, now, and I think that there was this level of like, it, no matter how poorly you behaved, it was excusable, because then it gave me an excuse to behave poorly. So I
Right.
would I would enable your bad behavior, because then I couldn't be called out for mine.
Yeah. We would set
And
the bar. It was our watermark, was the way we were
Mhm.
acting with each other. Well, if that's acceptable and that's our bar, then hell, I can always skirt that line until everybody around me agrees that it's unacceptable.
The watermark was in the septic tank at that
Dude, the
point, I
watermark
think.
was mad low, dude. It was, yeah.
But that's the thing, and that's so. And I don't want to say, obviously, that was not the only connection that we shared, or else we wouldn't be here now,
Right.
21, almost 22 years later,
Right.
which is a long time.
Yeah.
Maybe not in cosmic time, but like in alcoholic time, that's a long time. Um,
Yeah.
but we were so quick to dismiss anything that happened the night before. We were so quick to just be like, oh, he was drunk. Like, how many times would you say that? Or how many times, like, for example, when we lived in Seattle and you lived at the house up north and I lived kind of further south, and how many times did I flake on you, or say we were going to come up, or come hang out at the house because you had a kid at the time, and you were, quote unquote, the more stable of any of us, if you
Right.
can believe that.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure you
No,
can't.
I
You
know.
were, but
Yeah.
I mean, how many times did we flake on you about coming up to hang out? I mean,
A
and
lot.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
how did that make you feel? Were you able to? You never. I mean, I don't remember you being angry or expressing your
Mm-hmm.
frustration.
Oh, I did
Maybe.
that all the time though, but in
Oh
different
well.
ways. Maybe not about that one thing in particular, but I was always pissed off about something. But I can understand it now. It's like, well, who wants to get loaded around a 3-month-old kid,
Mhm.
But I also, yeah, it would bum me out because I would needed that. I felt like that was my pressure release and I needed it. I wanted to have a good time with my buddies and drink like I wasn't a father to a 3-month-old kid. And you know what I mean? Like having a wife who was recuperating from giving birth and dealing with all
Mhm.
that. And yeah, I wanted that distraction from it. And so when you guys would be like, yeah, we're on our way up, and then not come up because you'd all end up at some bar, like let's stop for a couple on the way, and then that couple you stop for on the way would just turn into the rest of the night. And then
Hours. Yeah.
yes, they're at the house being like, they said they were going to bring me a bottle of whiskey and they didn't bring it, so now I got to figure out a way to go get it too, and I guess I'll just walk down there. I couldn't go to that one liquor store on 9th because I had an Arizona ID and she wouldn't take it because it wasn't a driver's license, it was an ID. But I didn't have a driver's license because I was drunk all the time and I didn't want to drive a car. And so I had to go all the way down to the locks from like up in like 9th and Holman, up by like, if people live in Seattle, listen to this, you know where I'm
Mhm.
talking about, up by the Dicks. let's just say it was like a 4-mile walk, just one way, And I'm not, my fucking out of shape drunk ass is not walking an 8-mile walk in a circle to go get a bottle of whiskey, I mean, I ended up taking the bus,
Yeah.
Yeah, because they would take my ID, but even then that was a toss up. Like they might not. And that day at the locks, I might get the young guy at the ponytail who's mad at me for whatever. And he's like, I'm not taking your Arizona ID that never expires. This shit is fake news.
Basically.
And then it's you guys over at the schooner or whatever, just being like, yeah, we were going to head up there, but, so-and-so wanted to stop for a couple of quick snorts before the way up. And it just turned into an all night thing. So it was this enabling behavior there, though, because I was not only waiting for you guys to provide me with companionship and a distraction, but usually you guys were bringing me booze along with you because I hadn't figured out a way to get to where I needed to get booze,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that the thing that we apologized for each other constantly. I know I did. I would just dismiss it, whatever it was. It was like, oh, I would feel hurt or upset if somebody said something, or if somebody was, like flaky or didn't do what I wanted. But I'd be like, oh, well, they were drunk.
Right.
Oh, that's fine. That's just Jerry when he's drunk. That's just, Coda when he's drunk. Like that's right. That's okay. That's just how he is.
It's a watermark. It's like that's our bar right there. We've set that form of behavior, that pattern of behavior is acceptable to us because we are also guilty of it as well. So it's cool. It's good. Don't worry about it. You're fucked up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was constantly let off the hook. Mm-hmm. And it was all it did was lead to worse and worse and worse behaviors. I mean, I remember wishing I could explain to somebody when I would make plans and then I would flake on everybody and I wouldn't answer my phone, that I would be laying in bed after like a 3-day Rumpelmans bender. And right. I was physically unable to get out of bed until like 4 or 5 in the afternoon.
Oh no, I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, and it would hurt so bad. Like I can't believe that I didn't see anything wrong with it. That was just how you spend your hangover day. Oh,
that
sorry,
like
I can't.
Sunday.
That's my
Sunday.
Yeah, that's my hangover day.
We had a friend who had a girlfriend who was really cool, and they were together for a few months. And our friend ended up breaking up with the girlfriend because she wanted to go out and do shit on her day off, which fell on his hangover day. And he was like, "Man, I can't get up and just be doing shit with her on my hangover day. That's my day to be hungover." So, rather than fucking not drink that night or not drink so much that night, he was like, "Nah, the whole relationship's a loss. Fuck it. I don't want to continue this relationship anymore. I'd rather just be hungover on that day." Which back then was like normal. It was like, yeah, that totally makes sense, dude. But now it's like, damn, dude, like your priorities, like what's your value system like?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, like that was the price. That was an acceptable price to pay to continue drinking like a fucking animal,
Right.
And
like, hey man, Sunday and Monday are just shot. Those aren't, those are days. I might be out at night. I probably will because I got to roam around, but all day Sunday, Monday, those days are just shot. That's just a lie in bed with a headache and diarrhea and just wish I were dead. That's my day. Sunday's my headache diarrhea day, and then Monday is just probably just a headache.
Jesus, that sounds awful.
Right now it does, but back then it was just what was acceptable. It was all part of the. It was like hazard pay is not the term I'm looking for, but it was just all part of the job. Just that's part of punching in.
I have this one memory of one of those days for me, and it was that apartment up on 65th. And it was getting later and later, and I knew I needed some food because I hadn't eaten either. I never felt like I could eat or even like handle water or anything, but I didn't want I don't know. But I remember ordering Chinese food. And so I would always order like $50 or $60 worth so that I would have it for like 2 or 3 days so I wouldn't have to think about food, which is really bad and kind of gross now that I think about it. And I remember having my laptop in bed and trying to just watch some movie to just to distract myself from the pain. And what I ended up finding, I don't know how I found it. So this is like 2007. It was that Robert De Niro movie called Stardust, where it was like he's in space or some shit. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
And I have this really sad, painful memory of laying in bed under a stained fucking down comforter watching Stardust on my old chunky laptop eating fucking noodles in
Sweating
bed.
through a migraine, yeah.
Sweating through a migraine with the shades drawn, just like in hell. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
ugh.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful.
You know, and then when we talk about enabling too, like enabling behaviors, I almost feel like the person, like if we're going to think about relationships too, it's like the person who's in this relationship who may not be an alcoholic is still exhibiting alcoholic behaviors, right? They like what is acceptable to them is you're their barometer. You know, it goes up and down with what's acceptable to you, and this person's in tandem with you, but they're not going through the drunken highs and lows. They're just feeling it empathetically with you and trying to
watching it from outside.
Yeah, and trying to supplicate you or take care of you. And it's those types of relationships they're hard. They're difficult because you know, you and I, we can talk from the alcoholic end of it. You know, I haven't been in a lot of relationships with other alcoholics where I was the non-alcoholic. Do you know what I mean?
No.
I you know, my parents are alcoholics, and when I was a kid, I grew up with them when I wasn't drinking, but I also I checked out. I wasn't around a lot, so that could have also, you know, that could also be part of the enabling process or that process. But, you know, the women I was with in my relationships, they all enabled me because I looked for a type, you know, unconsciously. I wasn't like consciously out there looking for someone who will put up with my shit. I just subconsciously looked for people who put up with my shit. You know, I would hang out with someone, and if they weren't willing to see me at my worst, horrible, blackout, crying, punching myself in the face, wilding out, if they couldn't hang with that, then I didn't want to be with them. You know, I would just split with them and then find someone else whose barometer for what's acceptable would flex with me and my changes. You know, it's almost like, and I hate to speak on, you know, people in that position, but yeah, I really feel like it is also alcoholic behavior in their own sense, you know.
Well, there's a reason there's a whole support group for these people as well, you know, because of dealing with the very specific problems of being in a relationship with somebody you love and care about who is afflicted with this disease of alcoholism, who acts out because of it and harms you on a regular daily basis, physically, mentally, emotionally, you know, financially, spiritually, every single way that it does.
Values and and even in that, it's like I say it all the time on the podcast, but I still love that quote where it's like the alcoholics don't take spouses or relationships, they take hostages, you know, like and I only chuckle on it because of the dark humor of that, you know. It's let me fucking push my will all over you, and then you'll probably push your will all over on me back because we're both enabling each other, you know. It's difficult. Everybody's situation is different. People will stick around a situation because of a certain set of circumstances that I'm not unaware of. Do you know what I mean? And I can only paint it with a broad brush from my experience, you know. I think me even painting it from my experience, that broad brush does a lot of people a disservice in a way, because I don't know their specific circumstances. I can only, once again, you know, the caveat is I can only speak from my experience as you can as well. And we've been on one side of the boat. We haven't been on the other side of the boat. You know, I only know what it's like to push my will on someone as a drunk. I don't know what it's like. I kind of know in friend relationships what it's like to have other drunks push their will on me, but those circumstances are different because I can always cut. Like, I don't have to hang out with you. I don't live with you, you know, like we're not in a relationship. Even with my roommates, I could just be like, fuck you, man, and just cut, you know? Yeah.
I think again, I've never been as a non-alcoholic in a relationship with an alcoholic, but I know that in the relationships I had with people who were non-alcoholics, I was not always oblivious and very often very aware the hurt and the pain that my actions brought. I was not, you know what I mean? Like it was expressed to me, you know, verbally and otherwise, but I felt it. And along with that there was a lot of the shame and the guilt with hurting somebody else that you supposedly cared about or do care about, and which just leads to more drinking, right? So we're not ever addressing the problem, let alone the relationship problem. And it may be that these relationships would not have worked out even if there was no alcohol involved. But
Right.
because of the
Right.
alcohol and because of those things, I mean, I definitely saw a lot of the pain and hurt that I caused, and I can
Yeah.
still I can still feel it, I can still see it, I can still remember it. And so I use these moments now as markers for how I behave in my current relationship.
Yeah.
Or even with people in general. It doesn't have to be in a marriage
Yeah.
or a close friendship, but also how I treat people in general in life, you know, regardless of the situation, that I am not manipulating them, that I'm not trying to get something from them, that I am there to be loving and supportive and kind. But what do you think as far as enabling in like your relationship, which has had ups and downs? You've been with the same person for a very long time.
Yeah.
And do you think, what do I want to say? Like, do you think there was enabling behavior on her part? And
Yeah.
was
Absolutely.
it?
Yeah. And she'll tell you yes. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But
Keep
and
going.
was there, like, in the moment where she had finally said, I'm done enabling your bullshit,
Yeah.
like that was a powerful moment, right? That was the moment where it was like her drawing those hard boundaries about what was acceptable and what was not,
Right.
is in a lot of ways what spurred you to make the changes needed to be where you're at today.
Right. Right. I think I had this moment where I was like, my punching bag doesn't want to be punched anymore. And I'm speaking metaphorically, like I was
Right.
never, I was never physically abusive. I was always really emotionally abusive though, and super manipulative. And I feel like this person I was pushing this torrent of unhappiness on was finally like, I'm done. Like, I'm done doing this, dude. Like, unless you make a change in your life, I can no longer continue doing this. And that was a huge wake up call because she had never done that before. And yeah, within our relationship, yeah, she absolutely enabled me. Yeah, and that's no detriment on her end. I'm not like holding,
No.
you know what I mean, holding it against her. She's just rolling. She loves me, and I love her, and she was just rolling with the way things were. And these are Jerry's hangover days. And Merry Christmas, here's a handle of whiskey, and it's okay, you were drunk. I get it, those first few times, but then it's okay, you were drunk turns into like, you can't just be drunk all the time and treating me like this. But yeah, there was definitely, and I don't really want to get into her psychology too deep because I would feel like it'd be a disservice to her. I'd rather her speak for herself, in this regard, as far as like what fueled her motivation to be like that with me. All I know is my end of it. But yeah, there was absolutely a lot of permissiveness. And like I said, I had set the bar. Like I had been
Sure.
dominant, quote unquote, dominant one, where I was like unintentionally dominant, though, in a real subversive kind of way, where I was just like, I set the limits in this relationship. If things don't work out the way I want them to work, then I'm going to be really loud. And I think I still do it today. There are times where I see myself doing it now, and I have to question why I'm doing that. And I shut the fuck up. And then I look at her and I'm like, yo, I'm sorry. I'm still relying on those things that worked for me in the past. I set the bar here. If I'm uncomfortable, we're not doing this. If this isn't going to benefit me, why am I here? And I try to do it less. I feel like I do it less, but I catch myself doing it sometimes. And I'm like, damn, dude, that tool is not working. And also, this is another human being you're talking to who deserves kindness and to be heard and to be supported. So yeah, we've been together for like 14 years now. 14 years. We've been married for 11 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been through a lot together, but I think what kind of keeps us hanging around each other and standing each other is that willingness. I talk a lot. That's why a podcast works great for me. And so I talk through my feelings with her a lot, and she is very incredibly patient, and is really good at listening, and is always sees the optimistic or the practical side to things, and so that works really well for me because I tend to be really reactive, and I'm less so than I used to be, but I still am more reactive than proactive. It's more like this moment where everything hits me and I just immediately flash. Oh man, I'm painting myself in a horrible fucking picture here, but it's it's just I think our dynamic works really well, and I think a lot of it in the beginning was rooted in enabling. And I think there are times where we still enable each other in different ways, you know.
It
Not
doesn't
all
have
of
to
them
just
negative.
be alcoholic. Yeah, it doesn't have to
Yeah.
just be alcoholic behavior too. It could be other shortcomings or defects of character that we
Right.
dismiss or look over in each other.
Right.
I think too, the waters get a little muddied when we as alcoholics are in a relationship with somebody who's not an alcoholic, but they still like to drink and hang out and have fun, and they have even if they are trying to keep up with us, they have a better understanding of their own limits because we do not. And so
yeah, she drank with us for years, but she didn't drink
yeah,
like we drank, but she would drink with
no.
us and get
a little drunk. And and I've been in relationships too where, and I'm looking back and thinking, oh, these people were just trying to have a good time. And I had this insatiable thirst that I needed to black out every single time. That was the unconscious, and sometimes the conscious goal was to get as drunk as possible.
Yeah.
And that was not the case for them.
You're like, I'm not trying to unwind. I'm trying to put this fire out. Inside of my body, inside of my mind, I'm trying to put this fire out with whiskey. And they're thinking like, oh, John, he just likes to dance and party and take his shirt off. Yeah, he drinks a lot, but he likes to party though. He's a partier, that dude loves to party. And in your mind, you're just like, man, I got to put this fucking emotional fire out somehow, Yeah. Yeah, same. I did the same.
I'm also, when I think back to, like, we had a lot of good times, and I know that we've had this discussion, argument, or debate before about, oh well, I don't want to dismiss the good times because we had a lot of good times, but like they were all for me, even though there were some fun times, there was always from like childhood this river of unrest. I like all the water metaphors that we're going with today.
Here we go. Yeah. Age of Aquarius, bro.
Of unrest.
Right.
There was this pool of I'll stop here in a second, but this like pool of sadness, and frustration and anger and confusion as a young man. And it was like that was always what it was, like you said, trying to put the fire out that was inside me. And so sure, there were some good times, but there was never was there a point, I feel like my drinking was not a direct reaction to my emotional instability and stunted, arrested development as a human being, right? It was always a reaction to that because it was like, ooh, I don't have to grow up. I don't have to become an adult. I can ignore everything. What a great little glass of fucking magic elixir, So it's something that I think we enable ourselves. We are very good.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
At rationalizing and justifying our shit behavior.
Yes, I did it today with fucking cookies. I made cookies last night or the day before yesterday, right? And so like I ran my 5 miles yesterday and I ended up eating like 4 fucking cookies, right? Because I was like, I ran my 5 miles. I earned those calories. And even today, like I ate 1 cookie because I was like, well, I worked out. I can have 1 cookie after breakfast. And then as soon as I finished that 1 cookie, my body was up and already moving towards the cabinet to get another fucking cookie. And I kept thinking like, damn, this is just like when you drank and you felt propelled towards the liquor cabinet, my little liquor stash, you know. But except now it's cookies, because at this point I'm like, while I'm thinking this, I'm already walking back to the couch holding the cookie and eating it. Do you know what I mean? Like I did a fucking fugue state with something that made me feel good. And because it made me feel good, I enabled myself. Well, you know, Jerry, you did lift weights today for an hour, and you know, you'll be all right. What's 2 cookies, you know? But to me, I'm like, well, one is good, but it made me feel good, so I need another one. And by the time I'm realizing I'm doing it, I'm already halfway done with it, you know?
Yeah.
And enabling myself in the moment, being like, hey, you earned it. That voice in your head is really fucking deceptive. It is. It is for me. And I don't know how it is for someone who doesn't have addiction issues, whether or not it's a rational voice or it's just not, I don't know, because that voice inside of my head being an alcoholic is so irrational. It's so fucking crazy. It is like so poisonous, but can be positive if I use it correctly. But it's so poisonous usually. It's just like, especially when I was drinking, that enabling, like, you earned it, dude. It was, you worked your fucking ass off. You earned that drink. Or, fuck, dude, she's being a fucking bitch. You deserve a drink. Or, so and so died. We need to get fucking loaded. You know what I mean?
Someone was, or I'm a new uncle. I got the new nephew.
Exactly. And we always talk about it like in an external circumstance, like, oh, well, we just found excuses because there's all these external circumstances. But it really honestly is, it's an internal circumstance. It's the voice in your head, that little alcoholic that sits in there that's just like, you earned this. Come hell or high water, there's a reason why you earned it. It is fucking Wednesday. That's why you earned it. You know, like, and that is enabling. That's all part of the enabling process. Is the way we talk ourselves into doing things. You know?
And I mean, I might say that you talk about cookies and you talk about enabling ourselves and the little voice that justifies everything, you know, in our head about how we earned it and we deserve it. I mean, food in general, I think that more people have food issues than actually know about them, because we have it's so ingrained in. I mean, we have to eat, right?
Yeah, we have to.
And also the food that I have found in this country and the way that it is produced and the way that, and this is a whole nother conversation I won't delve into deeply, but the way it's produced
is not your problem.
Produced, manufactured, advertised, sold, packaged, processed, sprayed, all that shit is to make it as palliative as possible, to the point where it's like, oh, this is gonna make my mouth cum, this bag of Cheetos, you know,
yes,
like, or
exactly
fucking Dr. Pepper, you know. And it's like, not every single meal needs to do that, but we have been, I think, conditioned in a lot of ways to think that that is the most important part of a meal, is that it tastes amazing. And it's like, no,
it's all about like entertaining. It's like, let's entertain our taste buds. And I'm like, how about let's just get some protein in here and some fucking simple sugars so I don't die, you know?
So I still struggle with the idea of entertaining and entertainment, and like, and I do better because now it's a bowl of cherries and a cup of almonds rather than the family-sized bag of peanut M&Ms.
Right.
So it's a step in the right direction. And maybe food, there's nothing wrong with food being entertaining. But I just know that I took it to the extreme, because that's what
you should be entertained by your food to some extent. Why not? You know, it should be one of those things that should make you feel good when you do it. But it, like you said, it is definitely presented to us in a really manipulative way. Yeah. But yeah,
so back on the top. I don't want to ramble about the food industry, but
the fucking fast food nation. Gotta ring the fast food nation.
Fucking French fries, man. They are gonna kill more people than anyhow.
Alex Jones, fast food nation.
It's enabling behaviors in ourselves lead to all the shit, and again, enabling behaviors in relationships with somebody. You were talking about, you were on the Al-Anon Reddit, and for those who don't know, Al-Anon, I don't want to say it's the equivalent, but it's the other part of, like, there's AA and then there's Al-Anon, which is for people who deal with alcoholics, right?
It's almost like damage control. You know what I mean? Al-Anon is like a meeting of the people who do damage control for all the shit people like me and John do. You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying? Like in a weird way. And also or parents, the
Yeah.
grown up and drunk parents. That's the only way I can think of it really. But go ahead, John.
And there's also ACA, which is the Adult Children of Alcoholics, which I haven't been
Right.
to any of those meetings, but I could
Yeah.
probably use them.
Same here.
But I don't, and again, we don't have a lot of experience, but you were talking about the subreddit,
Right.
Al-Anon subreddit, and can you explain that story of that woman and
Well,
what
there was
was
a post a few days ago and I was laying in bed and I should have been reading John Barleycorn. Oh, you took your headphones off. You didn't get to hear that joke. But
Yeah.
I was saying there was a post on. I was reading in bed the other night, and I was saying I should have been reading John Barleycorn, but I was reading Reddit, and it was this woman or this person had posted a few nights ago about. I guess it was this woman because she anyway, her and her husband is separated. She had been out of state. She had been taking care of her parents who had COVID, and she wasn't hearing from her estranged husband. And usually she hears from him every night. Usually, he contacts her, and he is an alcoholic. And she's like, I'm really worried because I don't know what happened, what's going on. It's not typical. And then last night I was reading, she had updated the post and was like, yeah, I had the police do a welfare check and they found him and they're dead. He died in his home because he drank himself to death. And the first post really struck me because it was like, as Al-Anons, this is our worst fear right here, right?
Mhm.
And it made me think about, I mean, because right now I think we're talking more about romantic relationships or even just, I
Mhm.
mean, we should really consider all relationships, close relationships, alcoholics. But it really struck me because when I was in relationships as an alcoholic, my biggest fear with that other person is that they would leave me for someone else or they would cheat on me with someone else. You know what I mean? That was my
Yeah.
biggest fear. It was never that they're going to die. They're going to drink themselves to death. Whereas people who are in relationships with me were like, Jerry might very well drink himself to death or get into an accident drunk or kill himself, commit suicide drunk. Those are their biggest fears. So it just really struck me. Do you know what I mean? Because that's the watermark. Our two
Mhm.
watermarks are so different. I was like, man, I think old girl might go out and fuck somebody else and totally break my heart. And they're like, it's a very real possibility that Jerry might hang himself drunk. Do you know what I'm saying? So like it
Yeah.
just blows me away the thought of that. Like what my value system is as a person who's doing things like my outward activity doing to another person where that person's doing back but taking more. I can't think of a better action
Mhm.
than doing things. My
Well,
actions
and
are
it
just battering on this other person constantly and they're just taking the battering.
and that if that that's an extreme case, and that's that's our you're living our biggest fear that the person we love is going to kill themselves
Right.
with alcohol,
Right.
whether intentionally or unintentionally. And
Yes.
the thing I would say for myself is that there would be no amount of coddling or giving me a safe space to drink or allowing me to drink or making sure that I was quote unquote safe to drink or taking care of me or excusing my behavior or supporting it in any way that would lead to a better outcome ultimately. It would just, do you know what I mean? Like it's hard to see that and be like, gosh, if only I had been there. And that was, I believe, in those situations that an alcoholic is going to kill himself with alcohol regardless of how much you cater to his alcoholism or
Right.
her alcoholism, their alcoholism. And the only thing that ever made me change my mind was the people and the situations around me that drew boundaries and said, no more. We're done with you. We're done with you. We're done with you. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the thing that spurred me into action. Not, oh, well, if maybe if I just, tried to organize some way to like just drink on the weekends or just drink beer or I just won't drink around
Bargaining.
her.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So none of those things are going to help. It was only in people standing up for themselves against me and people choosing not to deal with my bullshit that I eventually came to the realization that this
Right.
was not a good thing anymore. I don't think there was ever a time where somebody was kind, or not that they're not that kindness and patience is not important, but it's not, it's like tough love, right? It has to be, because that's the only thing that I think any of us respond to. I mean, I don't want to, I'm generalizing
Yes
here, but
and no. It's
okay.
weird, right? Because while you're talking, I'm thinking about this, and it's like, uh, it seems to be that within these relationships, these enabling alcoholic and then alcoholic enabler relationships, is that the enabler wants the alcoholic to change something, change their
Yeah.
behavior towards them. Okay, so you can continue drinking, which is what my wife said. She said, "You want to keep drinking, you keep drinking. You just got to stop treating me like the way you're treating me." And in my mind, I knew that I was just going to keep treating that way if I was drinking. Do you know what I mean? But it's like to change something. Either you quit drinking, quit treating me this way, or I can change you. Or maybe you'll figure out a way to change on your own if I just put enough pressure on you. But the alcohol, you can't change the alcoholic. You just can't. You can't make a drunk stop drinking. The drunk has to determine that it's finally their time to stop. And even then, it may not be their time. They may not take. You know what I mean? It's such a fucking fucked up situation. And so I think in my situation, I had someone tell me something and it stuck. You know, it stuck. My behavior was not working, and it wasn't working for me either. You know, I think there were absolutely selfish reasonings for me to get sober, because I was like, not only am I taking a crap on everybody else, but I feel like shit all the time, and I don't want to feel like shit anymore. So I'm doing it for me too. You know, more me than anybody else. And yeah, I really think in these enabling relationships, the other person is always trying to change their partner, you know, or the person that they're in this relationship with, right? And you and I realize that there is some, it sounds awful, and I don't mean to be negative, but there's some futility to it in trying to change there's absolutely futility in trying to change another person, because that person doesn't want to change, doesn't want you to change them. They need to do it on their own. That's the bitch on it, is like, it only really sticks if they do it on their own. In my experience, it never sticks when they make you do it. What the fuck, are you gonna make me do something? Especially an addict or an alcoholic, so fucking rebellious and resistant. Like, no, I'm gonna do this because you all had a fucking intervention. Like, now I realize, now I just feel bad and drunk. I know, I'm more of a piece of shit and I'm drunk. Sometimes they work though. Like, I can't say that, once again, painting with a broad brush, I can't say that that's true in every case. Just from what I've experienced myself personally. As a drunk man of the world.
As a drunk man of the world.
Ding! You know,
watch out, world.
Watch out. Here I come.
I think my understanding of Al-Anon and of dealing with alcoholics is that there are certain behaviors and ways of living and being and defining your boundaries that will help lead them to making a decision on their own, more so than if you did not, right? If you don't give in to those enabling behaviors, if you stand your ground about what's important to you and they see that will be more helpful, right? Than if you just kind of get them a cold compress for their hangover day on the couch.
Right. And a 12-pack. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the Al-Anon thing, I can't speak for that, because but I know it's the support group just like we have for each other. You know, it's just them being like, yo, what did your dumbass do yesterday? All right, let's support each other, you know? But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think maybe the point I think you're trying to make is that once you exhaust all the opportunities for an alcoholic to continue behaving the way they behave, you exhaust those chances and opportunities for them to keep doing it. Maybe it shines enough light on their problem that they are willing to make the change themselves.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe.
Well, I don't think, and I certainly don't think that anybody, yes, they need to.
But we adapt. We adapt good though. We're like cockroaches, dude. We adapt.
I just don't, there should never be any, and it's hard, man. Like, I don't know everybody's experience, and but I would never, I have made people in my life who were not alcoholics that I was in relationships and feel bad, feel guilty, feel ashamed, feel feel less than. Like I have done all those things, and that none of them deserved any of it.
Right.
Zero. Right. So I don't think anybody deserves that shit from an alcoholic spouse, an alcoholic partner, an alcoholic friend, an alcoholic father, an alcoholic mother, right? That
Right.
you don't deserve any of that shit just because you put up with it this long. It doesn't mean you deserve it. It's just normalized, you know?
Well, I also think the enabler adapts just as well as the alcoholic. You know, they adapt.
Yeah.
Humans in general adapt, but I really feel like there's something about desperation that causes one to adapt pretty quickly, unless they get trampled by it, you know. But yeah, and I would hate for this one pod for me and you to be like, we were awful, horrible, shitty people, mea culpa. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want it to be like I was this garbage person, because I was a garbage person, but I don't feel like I'm a garbage person anymore. And I mean, I could drag my wife in here and be like, baby, am I a garbage person? And she'd be like, first of all, don't call me baby. And second of all,
you never call me baby. Hey, baby.
I would never call her that ever. But you'd be like, yo, am I still a garbage person? And she's going to be like, well, no, dude. Like, what the fuck are you doing? I guess my point is, like, I'm aware of my faults, and I'm aware of what I did, and I try every day to like make up for what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at the end of the day, it's up to her. Do you know what I mean? To either resolve it, forgive me, and then we can resolve it, or fucking hold on to it. But you know, she hasn't really held on to much of it. She's been like, hey, you're cool. You're moody, but you're cool. Like, it's all good. Like, you don't do that shit anymore. So that's what counts, you know? So that being said, like, the enabling thing is weird. Enabling behavior is weird for both of us to speak on. It's not, it is and isn't, because I have enabled, like I said, I've enabled the shit out of myself quite a bit. And I've enabled you. I've absolutely enabled you.
We both have.
I've called you up when you were in the deadest of hangovers and been like, what do you need? And you're like, get me 2 Sparks and a fucking 6-pack. I would get you 2 cans of Sparks and a 6-pack at 8 in the morning.
And why? Why would you do that?
We could keep the ball rolling.
Exactly.
Like, I wasn't going to get myself 2 Sparks and bring over that last quarter of whiskey I had, you know?
Uh-huh. And so there was always those things. What was I just remember so many times of like, we used to joke, and but it was about food. We were very, 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 very broke. And there was, back in the 90s, there was this thing called Boys Town, and you would get commercials for Boys Town, and it was like, you know, runaway kids, and, you know, they could go, and there would be a place where runaway kids could get together, and there would be, you know, mentors and people to help take care of them. And it was like for homeless runaway kids. And so we used to joke, be like, man, it's like Boys Town. We just got to all get together, and we try to feed each other or feed ourselves, and be like, I got a can of tuna and some frozen veggies. You got any mac and cheese over there? Yeah, I got 2 boxes of mac and cheese and some butter. Come over and we'll put it all together. And the same thing we did the same thing with booze.
Eat like fucking kings. Eat like kings, though. Wait, I want to circle back, because we'd sit on my living room floor in my shitty apartment that was totally run by a slumlord, and we'd eat like fucking king. We'd eat that GNU stew like kings, right? Because we call it GNU stew. It would be like tuna, frozen vegetables, mac and cheese, and then 2 fucking 12-packs, and watch whatever I could pick up on the rabbit ears on my TV, which is usually just 90s whatever, and just eat like kings. Like, we were shitting in tall grass, dude.
There was a beauty to it, but it was also like that was the thing. Like, what can we cobble together, because we've got to find a way to get fucked up.
You're absolutely right.
So, I mean, I always would be like, oh, you got a bottle of whiskey, I'll bring over some beer or whatever it was, and vice versa. Or like you said, Sparks in the morning. Which, for anybody who doesn't know what Sparks are, it was the original Four Loko. Yeah.
You got any of that pre-band, or that they banned it? I was like, you got any of that pre-band Four Loko? That's the good shit, the pre-band. But yeah, so we all cobbled shit together. We all enabled each other, because if I enabled you, and I cannot speak for other people, but I know in our relationship, if I enabled you, I would benefit from it as well. And I feel like sometimes within that enabling process with other relationships, if you enable the drunk as a non-drunk, the drunk will be much nicer and it benefits you. And that's not a bad thing. But on our end, it was definitely manipulative. Because I was like, if I can get you loaded, I know I have enough to get you kind of loaded, and that you work at a bar and you have enough money to get both of us really loaded. And you're
Mhm.
like, what about my water bill? And I'd be like, I bet you can't shotgun a beer with me. You know what I mean? And then from there, fucking water bill. We're going down to fucking,
Yeah.
to what was that hole, that bar, that tiny hole in the wall. We'd go there. But yeah, anyway. Yeah.
Um,
I'm trying to
but
remember the name of the bar in a
which
sobriety.
one?
The one next to the Balmar, the one that was named after the singer.
Oh, not the smoke shop. Hazelwood. Hazelwood.
Thank you. Yeah, Hazel Hole. Yeah, being there.
Like the Hazel Hole. Well,
Yeah.
and there's nothing, I really don't think there's anything wrong with having a bar, owning a bar, and having people who going
Why?
out to have drinks and people who can handle it. I just cannot do that. You cannot do that.
Yeah. Dude,
Yeah.
just because I almost drowned at a water park once doesn't mean I want to ban all water parks. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so just because I can't handle my shit doesn't mean that the people who can't handle this shit aren't allowed to go out and get a little loose every once in a while, or just feel a little warm, or be like, this cognac's delicious. Like fucking cognac delicious. Ew. Just drink it fast. Like
Get it down.
get it down, dude. Yeah.
And you brought up a good point I want to go back to about the non-alcoholic saying, oh, if I enable the alcoholic, they'll be nicer to me.
Yeah.
And there's this hostage situation that I know I felt as a kid with my dad was like,
Right.
figure out the behaviors that will make him, because his behaviors were so erratic and unpredictable. If I could somehow push those erratic and unpredictable behaviors in the positive or in the calmer way, that's what I would work toward. And so that became sort of my motivation for anything that I did with him was what's going to make him calm, what's going to make him more relaxed, what's going to make him not fucking angry and drunk and get off back. But those behaviors were not helpful to him. It was just me. Again, we talked about at the top of the hour. Triage. You're just doing damage control. Like, what is how am I not going to get hit in the mouth tonight? And that's terrible to say, but it's true.
Well, you learn how to blend in with the wallpaper. I did that too. But in different situations, though, because go ahead, continue your thought. I didn't mean to interrupt.
My thought is that it's very, 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 very hard to take a stand, certainly as a child, but also if you're in a relationship with an alcoholic who is abusive in any way, it's hard to take a stand. And so you're like, well, God, I'm stuck, I'm trapped. And so I think that's why something like Al-Anon can actually give you the tools to navigate those relationships.
Yeah.
Or to leave them.
Right. Because sometimes you can't, sometimes you can. Like leave them. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes though, you make excuses why you can't. Just like I made excuses why I couldn't quit drinking. And I see that sometimes with people where they're just like, well, I can't because of this, this, and this. And I was like, yeah, I told myself I couldn't get drinking because I was afraid of getting sick, or I couldn't afford rehab, or whatever fucking excuse I had. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we all have excuses, I guess. I don't know what
saying a different situation. You were talking about a different situation. I was talking about my dad, and you said
because as a child, also an adult child of alcoholics, like my dad wasn't around. My dad was a nice drunk. My dad was not mean. My dad was like a cool drunk. My mom was a cool drunk too. My mom was just mean when she wasn't drunk. You know what I'm saying? And so there was that period of time for like 8 hours every day where she was a drunk during the day when she had to do shit, and she was mean as fuck. But my dad was just never around. But if on those very rare occasions my parents get into it, I would just fucking fade into the background. Like I learned how to camouflage,
like Homer in the bushes.
Right, exactly. And there were a few times where I like tried to clap up on my dad when I was around Olive's age, like 10 or 11, and he just was drunk and shut it down immediately, and that, he shut it down quick and mean. And I realized, oh shit, I don't need to fuck with my dad and challenge him. So I'm just going to fade into the woodwork. I'm just not going to be here. That's why I said I wasn't around much, because I wasn't. I would just lock myself in my room or just leave, be an 11-year-old out there in the world on a BMX bike, just being away from them, So it was more like not me manipulating my behavior so that I wouldn't catch a beating, but just, I guess it was in a sense, but also in a sense, how gone can I be so that I don't catch a beating or an emotional beating or whatever it was, But you and I, though, and you can relate. I saw you relating that, just being invisible. If I make the least amount of noise as possible, I'm quiet as possible, I won't be in their fucking, their shit lasers. Their radar.
Yeah,
Shit
and that's
lasers.
no way to live.
Boom. No, it sucks because like the way I live with my kid, I'm like, I want to hear you. I want to hear what you have to say. I'm curious. I fucking made you. Like, I want to see where my investment is going. What's going on with the Olive Corporation?
You know,
Like, I'm
we
very
don't
curious, you know?
we don't really talk about it too much. I mean, because we spend most of our time talking about alcoholism, but I was curious. Like, it trips me out, man, that you have a kid and like she's 10
Yeah.
and she's got her own mind and her own thoughts and her own
Yeah.
feelings, and she likes to do other stuff. And
We started playing this video game together. It's this co-op game called Knights and Bikes, and it's like a little top-down game. You look at the characters at the top, and they do things. And it's an indie game, and it's really pretty. The art is beautiful, and it's all about these two little girls and their imagination. But it's a really complex kind of story. Like one of the little girls, like her mother dies, and the father's coping with it. And then at one point in the game, they're dealing with the father, and he's drunk. And Olive's like, "How sad, he's drunk." And I just realized, like, my kid's never seen me drunk. Like, I was drunk up until the point. My kid hasn't seen me drunk, being aware of me being drunk. You know, I was drunk till my daughter was about 4.
right.
Right. Yeah. And I think those early years, I was drunk around her, but if she was so young, the process was different. You know, now she's aware of it. And so she's never seen me, like, as an aware kid, as a drunk person. But yeah, I totally got a kid that I hang out with, you know, and like, I'll paint in the garage most of the day, and then every 45 minutes, every hour, I come back into the house to use the bathroom or to fill up a paint tank or to get a soda. And every single time, I'm like, "How you doing? How you doing? How you doing?" I know it drives her crazy, but I'm like, literally, like, "What's going on? I haven't seen you in 45 minutes. Anything new? You choking? You good? Like, on fire? Are you happy? Do you need something?" And yeah, that's our. I mean, this quarantine, I just spend a ton of time with her now. I see her all the time. I love it. She's hilarious. She's a 10-year-old. Yeah, she's trying to figure out. They dyed her hair pink last night, like her and Megan. So yeah, but yeah, it is a trip that I have a kid, and I was the first one, and I think I'm the only one out of our group, our little star party.
Yeah.
Has a kid. Yeah. I know it's wrong, but yeah. None of you guys
I just think
had kids.
I think it's great that you don't that she doesn't have to contend with any of that
Right.
stuff.
I hope she doesn't, right? And that's all I can do is just make sure, for anybody's fucking sake, other than mine, like, make sure she doesn't, you know. And I hope she doesn't. You know, I don't intend on it. But once again, like you said, we can't really think about 6 months from now. I mean, because it's uncertain. So all I got to do is just maintain working with you and working with myself, and you know what I mean, working my program and just keeping my shit together and emotionally to make sure that kid doesn't have to be like, "Fuck, I need to fade into the woodwork because dad's fucking loaded and flashing his shit lasers everywhere."
And I would say, I'm saying what a relief, like, but she doesn't even know that. And that's an amazing thing. Like, there's no like, "Oh, what a relief. I don't have to do that anymore," because she's never had to do that, you know?
Never.
And like, that's awesome. I mean, what a fucking, what a leg up in the world. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I got really lucky. I really do. I feel very lucky that I fucking figured it. I mean, not figured it out, but I figured out that it's not working for me. Like, I got lucky in that sense that I figured it out. Yeah.
And this gives you an ability or a potential or an opportunity to enable in a positive way, right? To support and be like, "Hey, what are the things that you really want to do well at? What are the things that you want to shine at? What are the things that you're good at? What are the things that you need help with?" And you can kind of push those positive support and enabling in directions to the people around you, rather than it having to be damage control. You can actually build something with what we have now, what you have now.
And that's funny because we never really did talk about the positive aspects of enabling in this podcast, because there are positive like, I can enable you to continue doing whatever it is you're doing that's positive for you. I can enable you in your singing career or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I'm glad that I could do positive enabling with her. And there are still things that float around, you know, that come up, you know, that I get impatient or snap at her. And then Megan will be like, "Yo, you know, she's really, that makes her feel shitty." And I'm like, "You're right. You know, I would feel shitty if my dad would snap at me, you know." But I'm more aware of those things now. I mean, yeah.
Well, I think
it's weird up in this house, dude. We've been hanging out together now since fucking March. Dude. Like,
yeah.
She like never went back to school from spring break. You know, we're just, it's crazy. It's weird.
Well,
in a good way. It's fun. but it also is really weird.
It can be a good thing, and it can be a bonding thing, and it's just, the level of support that can come from enabling people to do positive things in sobriety. Like we talked about running, and I remember when we would talk about it, you're like, yeah, man, I can't really run. Yeah, I don't know, maybe I need the right shoes. I kind of walk my couple of miles, and that's about it. And now you're like, I'm 5 miles every day, or maybe not every day, but still.
No, I run 5 miles 2 days a week. I run 5 miles. I try to do it 3 days a week. I did 2.5 without stopping yesterday.
Nice.
Without stopping for a break, because I've been taking your advice and pacing myself. But I also look at my Fitbit, and my Fitbit will be like, "Oh, you're a little under pace that whole time." And I was like, I don't give a fuck about paces. I'm looking for longevity, and then once I get longevity, then I can start learning pace again. I mean, I had a 9-minute mile.
Nice.
So and was like, yeah, dog, killing it. But it was also downhill too. So, I can't really be like, momentum.
Mm-hmm.
But
so I think that we have to remove all of that mess and triage and all the damage and destruction so that we can actually start building something and be part of a constructive relationship, be part of be part of whatever the community is, however large or small it is, right?
Right. Because at the end of the day, man, nobody really deserves that shit.
Nobody.
To feel that way. Nobody really does. That I can think of off the top of my head. If y'all can think anybody deserves it, let me know.
But I don't think so.
No, exactly.
But it's just it's still a hard thing, and it takes time, and it takes patience, and like I read out of that. Did I read out of that book did I read you about the hatred? Oh, I didn't. So I'm going to read this really quickly, and it's from I'm reading The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama, which is really good. It's got it's his conversations with this psychiatrist, but and this one is called Dealing with Anger and Hatred. And it says, the only factor that can give you refuge or protection from the destructive effects of anger and hatred is your practice of tolerance and patience. And I think that's really true. And now it doesn't mean fold over and let people run over you, but having tolerance and patience can help you make better decisions. It has helped me make better decisions about how I go forward with my relationships and the actions and getting the results that I want.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think you did read it.
Maybe
you read it before we started recording.
Yeah, I did. I don't know. Well,
but I think tolerance and patience, it's if it's been read twice, it's a great message. All right, motherfuckers. All right, fools. Take that. It's all about fucking tolerance and patience. Get your shit together. We're here to scare you straight with love.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just I think it's a good thing for me this is a good reminder to me to be more aware of my own behaviors with myself and others.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool.
Right on.
And with that, we'll call it a day.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up, B. All right, Jerry. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, I'll talk to you later too, man. Have a good one.